Hey everybody, how's it going? It's Arwan from Gamesmithing, and today we have a very special video for you. It's a long one. It's about an hour and a half. It's a Q&A that me and Alan have been wanting to do for a very long time now. But yeah, we try to answer most of the questions with the very limited time we had to do so. But yeah, I hope you all enjoyed this one. We do have plans on making other ones like this, But if we can't make any promises. But if you want to be up to date with stuff like this, please do follow us on our socials like Discord, Twitter, and stuff like that. We're gonna leave all of the useful links down in the description of the video so you can follow us. But yeah, hopefully you enjoyed the video. Thank you so much for all the support, and it's been awesome. Till the next one. Bye bye. So, I see that a lot of people actually are. Maybe we should just get like the most obvious questions out of the way, shall we? Let's just talk about. I mean, lots of people have asked about multiplayer and co-op and Soulstone survivors and things like that. That's probably one of the most asked things about the game, right? If we're going to add co-op sometime soon or maybe not. So maybe you can talk a little bit about that. What are the plans for co-op or multiplayer, or is there going to be co-op at all?
Yeah. Just before we begin, I don't know why GivCon is here as well.
Yeah, there we go.
Thanks. Yeah. So yeah, just jump straight right into the questions. So about multiplayer co-op, which I think is already, probably one of the most requested features since the demo of the game a year ago. It is not something currently in the plans or currently announced, but never say never. It is something that we personally love, something we really would like to do. We have experience working with multiplayer games in other games, so it is a possibility, but we understand the challenge as well. It is not something easy to get done. So who knows? But no promises for now.
Okay, yeah, and for everyone in the chat right now, I'm going to be reading the questions from the AMA questions channel. I'm gonna post that question right here, so you guys can go ahead and post your questions there. I'm gonna read it from there. Okay, I'm gonna avoid reading the chat too much from
I
here,
think
but I
we'll
think it's
be
fine.
actually. I think we'll have to actually be from both. I don't even know how
Yeah,
we're doing. So
yeah, we
we'll
can do
keep the
from both.
AMA open. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things most people would like to know about as well from the game is what are exactly the plans for the game for the near future. We know this update, for example, took a little bit longer than expected. It took 3 months for us to deliver this update. It took a little bit longer. And what can people expect? Like, are the updates gonna take as long as this one? Are they gonna be a little bit faster or maybe longer? What can we expect
Mm-hmm.
from the next upcoming updates for Soulstone Survivors?
Yeah, and I think that's a good question. I think specifically for the people that have been with us for a long time, you know that when we first released the game to early access, we used to have basically daily updates that became weekly, and then it grew to monthly. And the reason for that is both that the updates are a lot more ambitious right now, than they used to be back in the day. So we add a lot more stuff per update. So it requires a lot more testing, requires a lot more verifying stuff works as properly. And we grew as a team as well, and that also brings certain challenges. Some getting everyone to develop features in parallel, and then getting everything together, make sure everything works. So how long each update should take? That is variable, to be honest. It depends on the features we'll be delivering on that update. So let's say one day we do make the multiplayer, that is not something we can fit into a monthly update. Right? That's not something we could get in 2 months even. Or even for the skill tree, right? It's such a big update. It took us a lot of work. So that's why it takes a little bit longer. Supposedly, we could do smaller updates, but that generates a lot of overhead for us as well. So developing the big features becomes slower because we have to separate work. And I'm just mentioning that because I read people mentioning this, in the chat before, and this has been brought up multiple times. So there is an overhead to making multiple smaller updates. It's also mostly not as exciting, if you get just a few bug fixes. Of course, bug fixes, they are always needed, and if it's something we can fix easily, we'll do it. But if you get one new weapon, it's not like something we'll really want to get back to the game. So there are a lot of factors that go into deciding how big an update is, when we want the update to be out, how long it will take, etc.
Yeah, okay. So I'm gonna relay on this segue right here, and I would like to talk a little bit about how many more updates do you think we're gonna get out until the actual release of the game? Like, do we have a day plan, or is it more like a until the game is ready kind of thing, right? Like taking our time to do things.
Yeah. So to talk a little bit about that, which again, I also see a lot of people asking about this, not just here, but in the day-to-day chat. We have, for example, in our Steam page, the roadmap, right, which lists a lot of weapons, a lot of skills, and whatnot. But take that just as a guide, right? That is the minimum amount of content we want to have in the game before it releases. However, what we're doing is focusing on the areas that, from player feedback and from our own feeling, we notice are the most lacking in the game, and we work on that. And sometimes that leads us in directions that are not in the roadmap, right? So the roadmap never mentioned anything about Ascensions or unique skills or this huge skill tree. And that took us a lot of work. So, we could have just stick to the plan, just add the 5 weapons and that's it per character and the characters and whatnot, which I think would be cool. But we know that there are other requirements that will appear as we learn from the game, right? It's kind of a journey developing Soulstone Survivors. We begin with a goal, we know where we want to go, we want to make it the best game we can, but we're always open to explore directions that we didn't think initially, and if that is something that the players are looking for, sure, let's do it, so there is no number of updates until the full release, and I wouldn't even be able to promise a date. Originally, we had planned for 1 year until the full release from the beginning of early access. I can say that that's probably not gonna happen already. It will be a bit longer, but it will be when the game is ready, pretty much.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, I've seen Div Connect ask a question here in the chat. Will there be any plans for a more competitive event for the game in the future? So, fun fact, we actually had a couple of months back a kind of a speedrun event. It was a once in a time event. It never happened again. I don't know if we're gonna make stuff like that again. Probably, like, who knows, right? But are there plans to actually add or support anything like that in the game, like a leaderboard or stuff like that?
Yeah, the problem with that for us is that our game, since it's single player, it's offline, it's basically impossible to prevent cheaters. That is what basically keeps us from adding, say, a ranking mode inside the game of fastest run or highest overlord mode ever reached. I think that would be really cool. But since the game is entirely in your machine right now, we have no way to prevent cheaters. We could always cheat here or there and get a crazy score and ruin it for everyone. But the sad reality of how rankings work, I guess.
Yeah, that's actually really sad, but it's just life, I guess. There's not much we can do about that
Yeah.
right now. Yeah, so taking from a little bit of the AMA chat now, I've seen some people ask here. This is actually another one of the big questions, right? That the community wants for a very long time now, and it's about mod support. And if the game is actually going to support mods until release or even before that, right? Are there any plans for that? Like, do you want mods in your game, or is it something like the teams try to actively avoid or don't want in for whatever reason?
Mm-hmm. No, I think definitely we would love to have mods. I think mod support is honestly critical for the health of the game, for the health of the game for a long time. Uh, and we would love to add, proper mod support, something that actually makes it easier for people to add content to the game, not only very dedicated programmers. So there is a mod right now, but it's the guy deserves a lot of praise because there we didn't make it easier for him. So we definitely would like to have proper mod support. It's just a lot of work. It is not an easy feature, especially given all the game has. Some things are a lot easier, right? So supporting mods such as custom characters, for example, that probably wouldn't be too hard. It would take some work, of course, but probably wouldn't be too hard. But there is so much more that you can do with mods. So one day, definitely. I don't know if that will happen before the full release. It will really depend on what we notice as the demand for the game. But it's definitely something we're considering.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty cool. I personally love mods when I play games, right? I personally love them. So I see as Bjorn Watley asked here, and I think this is a really important question for us to clear out as well. So he asked when the actual like the beta of the game, right, the early access is over, will people have to pay again for the game? Is that something that's gonna happen, or you pay once and you own the game for the rest of your life, basically?
No, you pay once, you own the game for the rest of your life. And kind of segue into that question, I think some people also ask is, will there be further updates once the game is
Oh
fully
yes.
released, or is that it? Is that just something, And definitely for us, we see the future full release of the game as kind of a marker to say, look, we believe this experience is complete right now. If you play it, you will have fun and you enjoy it for a long time. But it's probably not going to be everything, right? It's not going to be everything we want to have in the game. So there is definitely going to be updates post release. We'll have to see. It's still a bit far away. But that is the plan, at least. We plan to continue supporting the game, hopefully for as long as possible.
And I have actually seen some people ask this. Are there any ways for them to support the game other than buying the game right now to support the continuous developments for some survivors, or maybe even other games?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, to be honest, I think that the biggest way that people can support us other than buying the game is really what we're having here, right? It's those questions, the feedback we get on Discord, on Steam, on YouTube, everywhere. I know that some people might think that their feedback kind of goes into the void and no one ever reads that, and it's not really considered. But for us, at least, I can say that's not the case. We read pretty much every feedback we get. Takes a lot of work. It's not something we do lightly, even. But for us, it's critical. It is how we've done it from the beginning, and the game is what it is today, thanks to the awesome feedback we get. A lot of features came directly from player feedback. So, well, before anything else, thank you guys. Like the game wouldn't be what it is today without the feedback we get.
Oh yeah, that's for sure. I've seen a question here in the chat from C, and he's asking the adjustment of runes, such as the change in rarity and power, indicates a significant shift in the game's meta. How did the team analyze player data and feedback to determine the impact of these changes on overall gameplay dynamics? I think he's asking about
Right.
like how we collect the data, right, and relate them to make
Mm-hmm.
changes.
No, I actually have to admit that our analytics of the game is very lacking right now. I wish it was a lot more robust than it is. So a lot of what we do is from our own testing and just evaluating the sentiment from the community here on Discord or Steam or elsewhere. We watch videos on YouTube of how people are playing the game or what type of challenges they're having. So, for example, for the runes, one of the recent changes we made was to reduce the cost of the runes that change the skills you have, right? Such as mastery runes and whatnot. And that is because we know that those are runes that are hard to use. You're sacrificing so much to get new skills that actually may be random depending on the rune. So actually talking about that a little bit more, just because I also saw the question so many times in chat even today. There are plans, announcing that before it's even in the works, but maybe I shouldn't do that. But there are plans, and we want to do it sooner rather than later, a separation between runes that are build related. So let's say mastery runes or affinity runes, gambler, this type of rune, and the runes that actually affect your power. Because we want the game to be about supporting as many builds as possible. I think that those runes that change how you are able to build your character, they help the game support more builds, and right now they're just not interesting enough for you to remove your recklessness, your rune that increases your damage by like 50%. So that's why we'll definitely one day make this change and keep them separate as two different things. You can have these runes that change your build and these runes that change your power, and they don't compete. So you can actually use both without being less efficient.
Okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I've seen Asbjorn ask another question here. Do you guys know what the highest tier of weapon will be yet? Is that actually
Currently,
planned?
currently the plan is legendary weapons being the highest tier. So each character will get a total of 5 weapons. At least that's the plan for now. I think that it gets to a point where it may be more interesting to have more characters so we can create different play styles rather than more and more weapons for these characters, right? Because the weapons tend to support, or the idea is that they support the core playstyle of the character, right? So you will get to a point where the weapons will start being less and less different from each other, right? So that's kind of why we're thinking of this way.
Okay, yeah, that's pretty interesting, right? One other question that I think the community has asked a lot for in terms of feedback from the recent months is about a way to sync our resources into. Like, people have been playing a lot of the game and they have a lot of resources accumulated up, right? So I've seen people asking about stuff like a crafting system or maybe something like Mo asked here, like, will there be a way to change stats on the weapons, like a RNG based system using new currency or stuff like that, like a crafting kind of system, right, into the game? Is that planned somehow?
Yeah, that's actually has been a really big priority for us, even though it's not showing, right? It's not in the game. But we have been getting requests for this for a long time. I think that the skill tree came more to solve the problem of character diversity, not solve, but help in that sense, right? So it has characters now play a lot more differently than they used to before Ascensions. And with that, we got sort of a currency sink in a way, right? Because it's kind of expensive to learn everything there is. But it's not infinite, right? It's not never gonna be enough. So we do have a system that we talked a lot about internally. That is a crafting system. I don't want to go into too many details. That would maybe be a video of its own. Let's put it this way. But we do want to add a system to the game where you're able to create new things, let's say, that will offer you ways to customize your characters even more. It will likely require, some luck or luck modifiers at least, in a way that you control the output, but not 100% directly. And it should offer at least an interesting way for you to spend resources, but not be mandatory at the same time, right? That's that's the tricky balance of our resourcing for a game like ours. We want something that it's cool to interact with, that you want to create new items or new things, but it shouldn't be mandatory, right? We shouldn't require players to play for 500 hours to be able to take the best of the system. So this is where we are, trying to hit the right spot, but it's challenge.
Yeah, that fun fact actually. G, I think his name is just G here in the chat. Yep. He actually made a question that we actually talked about a little bit, right? Internally, I mean. And he asked, how about a resource conversion system? Or this type of thing. Like, is that something that we're looking to put into the game as a part of the whole crafting system?
Yeah, good question. That's also something that we, as you mentioned, we talked many times internally of how could I convert maybe major soulstones into different types or different minerals into other types of minerals. We know that, sometimes you have a lot of one, but basically nothing of the other. So yeah, we would love to add a feature that allows you to do that. We haven't really gone into the details of this yet internally, to be honest. So it's likely not coming in the next update, for example. But it is definitely in the plans. Definitely something we want to have in the game.
Okay. So I'm gonna go back to the AMA questions here, to the questions we had before. And there is a interesting question here that I wanted to ask. It's from, let me see, it's from B. It's just, his name is just B here for some reason. Are you making or planning on making more Soulstone games other than Rogue Soulstones, of course, right? Recently, we had a video out on our YouTube channel where we actually went on a trip to get to know the team a little bit better and like bond as a team. And in that video, we actually share a little bit more about this info there. But yeah, can you talk with us a little bit more about other possible games from the same IP?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess that just to also take your question and talk a little bit about that. So, as I'm not sure if everyone knows, but we're a fully remote team. We're all Brazilians, but we live in different parts of the world. So, that's if you don't know the team, check out the video I want to mention. It's in our YouTube. Hopefully, it's a good time. But talking about specifically um, new games in the Soulstone series, let's put it this way. It is definitely something we love to do. Rogue Soulstone will obviously be our next priority. Currently, we're still pretty much 100% focused on Soulstone Survivors, right? As I mentioned many times, it is our goal is to make it the best game we can make it. So we'll never okay, enough of this. I don't know if it's done. Let's just go to Rogue Soulstone. We will never do that. So until we're capable of, as a team, to take either both projects at once or, continue supporting Soulstone Survivors, but also have a good throughput for Rogue Soulstone, that's not going to happen. But someday it will, I'm sure. And for future games after Rogue Soulstone, we have a lot of ideas, right? We talked so much about this internally about, from the video that everyone sent in the chat, about party games or more RPG, crafting games. There is so many types of games we're passionate about that it's, a big challenge in choosing what to make. It feels like I want to do them all at once, if I could. Unfortunately, it will probably take a little bit. But one day.
Yeah. One day. That's the dream, right?
Yeah.
So, a couple of questions here from Origin of Heaven. So he's actually worried a little bit about the increasing community interaction and transparency from us with the community, right? We know it tanked a little bit on the recent months because we've been so busy with this update. But are there any plans for addressing community feedback in the suggestions channel? Maybe we can talk a little bit about how we interact with the channel nowadays, how we actually collect the feedback and ponder upon it, right, internally. And another question that he made that is related to this is, would you guys be open to a community Trello or a Kanban so the community can see what's actually being worked on real time? Right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's also another great question. As I mentioned, like but first of all, I completely agree with his point. I do think that our communication with the community has been really lacking. Like in the beginning, I used to be online pretty much all day long here, and it's super cool to have this interaction with you guys. It really helps a lot, even. But as we get busier and busier and try to make bigger and bigger updates, we ended up kind of moving a little bit away from the community, not in the sense that we don't read what is being said, but our interaction reduced drastically, right? So I can definitely understand the concern. And I think this Q&A, this AMA is the first sign that we hear you. We want to make the communication clearer and more active. I want you to know what we're considering and why, and what are our plans, and know that you're being listened to. uh, One of the questions was about if there are plans to reply and comment on the suggestions channel. That is something that we actually never done since the beginning, but not because there are actually a couple of reasons, right? I think that the first reason is we wouldn't be able to properly comment and discuss on every suggestion, right? That would take too long. We're too small a company, so I don't think we just wouldn't have the bandwidth to do that, really. And what that leads to is the second reason, which is we don't want to, let's say, play favorites. If the moment that a developer jumps into a thread and starts talking about it, that probably will bring more interest from other players as well. It kind of skews our views from what is important, So just by participating in some of them, but not all of them, we are defining what is important, kind of, if that makes sense. So for us, it's important to have a separate view of what the community is talking about, what you guys are talking about, what you guys feel is lacking in the game, what you guys like, don't like, and then analyze from what is being said. All right, like we discuss internally. So yeah, to talk a little bit about how we usually do this. So we basically get all the feedback from all sources. We compilate it into a spreadsheet outside of all the platforms, just so we can, as a group, talk about it in a more efficient way, let's put it this way. And then we will discuss internally as a team. So, for example, whenever a new update starts, or whenever we're discussing long-term goals for the game, we will evaluate pretty much all of them. And some of them will be different wordings of the same thing, right? Some of them will be some stuff we can't do, stuff that we just wouldn't be able to as a team. Some of them are there is a hidden message, let's put it this way. So there are a lot of feedbacks that will say different ways to make kind of the same goal. So, for example, character variety, right? Which I think is an example I've even used before. There are a million ways you can implement character variety in a game, and there were a million feedbacks about it. There are still today, right? Of now maybe removing the tags, maybe it's adding more skills, maybe it is adding more weapons, maybe it is this or that. So we take a look at the group, and then we discuss internally. Okay, so clearly character variety is something that is being really a problem. Players are getting tired, feel that the characters are just all the same. What can we do? Is it one of the suggestions directly? Is it maybe something new? And so there is this discussion for pretty much all of the shortcomings of the game, let's put it this way. And that's kind of how we decide what comes each update, and also some long-term goals that we know we can make in one update.
Okay. There's a question here from Aurelian Soul. What gave you the idea for this game? Actually, how did you come up with it? Where did the idea come from? Soulstone Survivors.
Yeah, I would be a lie if I didn't say that Vampire Survivors was a big inspiration for us, right? It definitely was, but in more sense than the game itself. We've been making games for a long time. I've been making games for a long time, and I always loved roguelikes. It's probably my favorite genre. There is a very old game we did that isn't too far off from what Soulstone Survivors is, to be honest. It never went anywhere really, but there is this long going passion for the genre and the style of gameplay, and you having to adapt to new stuff. Then Vampire Survivors came out, people loved it, and that was kind of the trigger. At the time, I was working a different company, right? So we started Soulstone Survivors as a side project while still working a full-time job elsewhere. Uh, and we were so excited. I would say I still remember, but to this day, sometimes I'm testing a feature, I'm still playing the game. Like I just need to test for a minute, and I end up playing the whole match because oh, I got this upgrade. Now I want to finish the run, and so that's kind of where it came from, I guess, from a long passion for the genre, the spark that Vampire Survivors was, the timing, and yeah.
Yeah, okay. So since we are a little bit in the lighthearted kind of questions here, I see Jay here, Joyce's questions, actually, in the AMA chat here. And he asked, this is actually a discussion that I've seen happen in the chat a couple of times, actually, from our, some community members here on the Discord server. And he actually asked, as of right now, it seems to me that the playable characters are all male. Like, will there be female characters, or is that something that you plan on adding into the game?
Yeah, that's an interesting question
that's an interesting
because the character genders, it's actually funny because if you pay attention, there are female characters right now.
Yeah.
But they are, all subtle. Pretty much all of them could be male or female, and the female ones, they have, the breast show a little bit, but we will never make, overly sexualized characters, or the style of the game is not like that. It's not something we do. And sometimes, this is not the first time we got this question of people saying, hey, all characters are male, but why? And I'm like, but they aren't, it's for us, yeah.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, actually. And I see a question here in the chat. If any fan actually created content where, in this created content where it should become very popular, to the point where a significant portion of the player base actually uses it, would you consider adding it as official content? Actually, this is a fun fact. This has happened before, right? From the feedback we've gotten from events and, stuff that we gather from suggestions. Much of the stuff that we add into the game come from player feedback and suggestions. I'm not sure about actual content, so maybe we can talk a little bit about that specifically.
Yeah, I think that on actual content, the challenge is since the game doesn't support mods, right? It makes it hard for people to create content. So
yeah,
I think that is the biggest limitation because if there was a mod or a character, or, some content that was created by the community, it would honestly be amazing to get it officially in the game, speak with whoever created and try to just integrate it directly into the main game. It would be honestly an honor. I think that's the part of mods that as a developer for me it's super cool. Like someone worked on that. They like the game so much that they want to see more and cool stuff. So we would love to support that. I can say that from the bottom of my heart. But in terms of popular requests and stuff like that. As Arwan mentioned, back in the day, we used to have quite a few suggestion events where people would suggest new characters, new skills, new game modes, new fixes. And we would do a small community competition here of, the ones that get the most voted will be added to the game, and quite a few have already. Quite a few are still in line. They will be. It's just a matter of finding the right time, but we have all the notes here on our end. But yeah, definitely.
Okay, yeah, that's actually pretty cool. There is a question here. What do you think of the community the game has fostered? What do you think
Uh,
of it so far?
I think we're super lucky, is what I can say. It's
Oh
crazy
yeah.
how lucky we are because every day I come into Discord, I read what people are talking about, and it's everyone's supporting each other and helping and saying, oh, here's this guide. There are amazing guys like Mrs. Guide and so many others, and it's just amazing to me. And there is no other word for it other than lucky. I don't know how much influence we have on that, to be honest. So I'm super happy about the community and super grateful for the community that formed around the game. It is just amazing. It's really a pleasure interacting, um, having this interaction with players here and getting the comments. Uh, Everyone, it's super polite. It's insane.
Yeah, I agree as well. From the time I've spent with the people here, it's absolutely amazing, right? Having to chat with you guys, it's been great so far. I've actually been really impressed of how little, toxicity and stuff like that is usually happens when there's a lot of people gathered, right, in the same place. It's just bound to happen sometime, but it's impressive actually. It's pretty nice talking to you all. So another question that I've seen in the chat here. Um, Actually, going back to the our internal talks, actually, we have talked a little bit about maybe. I don't know if I should actually say, but we're talking about maybe revamping some things on the game, right? Perhaps. And a question here is, how about an upgrade or a revamp to runes or like the skill tree system? Like we see that there are a lot of still characters to be added into the game. Like, do we intend on filling all of them out before the game comes out? Do we intend on revamping stuff before the game comes out, like a rebalancing of skills and stuff like that?
Yeah, good question as well. I think that in general terms, uh, we're fairly happy with how the features are, at their core. I think there are improvements to make in all areas, right? I think the skill tree has some imbalances, the Ascensions have some imbalances, the runes have imbalances, so there are improvements to be done in pretty much all of them. But I wouldn't say that we would revamp any of them, right? I think that the one thing that we are currently talking about and looking at ways to address is about the general game balance, right? And there is the feeling of playing the game. And I know a lot of people feel like the game gets to be like a dodge simulator at later curses, which is a perfectly valid critic. It's super intensive, so there is no flow. There is no, oh, it gets harder, it gets easier. It's just full intensity all the time, and that is not something we're happy with. I think that the endless mode is also something I'm personally not very happy with in terms of balance. I think that it forces you to play in a very specific way, which is something that I really don't like. As I mentioned before, the goal is to give you the freedom to play in as many ways as possible. Right? We want as many builds to be valid as possible. And I think that right now that is not really true. Some skills are a lot more stronger than others. Some are a lot weaker. The fixes create sometimes really intense challenges and maybe too much. So yeah, that is the one area that is likely getting a big revamp soon, I must add, where we revisit the overall balance of the game and the feeling of the game. But again, this is another area that is very sensitive, right? Because at the same time, a lot of people do love the way it is right now. I personally like my games hard, so that might be why it's a bit crazy right now. uh so we were trying to find the right answer to give you guys more ways to play the game without sacrificing any of the ways to play the game. We don't want to just force you to play, okay, now the game is like this, and you're forced to do it.
Yeah, so related to that actually is a question here from okay, so there any plans for more diversity between the different maps of the game? Actually, this is something we talked about too, right? We're not currently extremely happy with how the maps are portrayed in the game, right? There's not exactly like a different kind of ways for you to interact with the map. It's basically like a different, visuals for the different maps. Are there any plans to add more to the maps, like maybe interactable objects or bigger maps with objectives that you can interact with and stuff like that? We do have events, right, on the maps that
Mhm.
that you can play with, but are there plans to add more to that kind of system?
Yeah. So yes, I think that this is a bit hard to answer question because it involves so much, right? Like the the events, like the secrets are one thing, that there is the enemy diversity, then there is the actual balance, then there is the size of the map, and then the objectives. uh I think that they all kind of play in different ways. I think that the challenge there is the game staying recognizable in a way, but also interesting, and it's not like suddenly you put a well, good example are like squad missions, right? No one likes them, but every game does them. So
Yeah.
it's being different for the sake of being different. It just doesn't mean better. So this is the type of thing we don't want to do. So that's why it's a hard to answer question. I think that maybe we might talk more about that probably in the future, but I don't want to get into it now because it's still being cooked. But let's just say we do have plans to bring more gameplay variety. And might I add, one thing I can say for sure is the focus of this next update is not adding more meta progression to the game, is not on the weapons, is not on the runes, it's not on more skill trees or anything. It is on adding more ways to play the game. It is on adding different ways for you to interact with the game system and try different things out. I think that I've seen this comment actually, and it's funny because I've been feeling this way for a while now. That the game now has a good amount of meta progression. There is more to come still with the resource sinks and whatnot. But I would like to see more gameplay variance, and that is not just on the enemies we've been adding to every map, but actually ways that you will think differently about the game. So that is the focus of this next update.
Oh yeah, that's great. I think community is gonna love what's to come. One thing that was asked here, still related to what we've been talking about here, is that I've seen some community feedback, and I've, you know, told you guys about this as well, and you've read it all here in Discord, that some classes actually feel almost opposite to how the game is like supposed to be played, like how the game wants you to play it, right? Like you have to stand still to be able to, uh, activate an ascension, for example. Can you talk a little bit about what the process and how we thought about creating these ascensions and why we came up with the solution that we came up with? And are you willing to, take the leap to maybe change it some way or another to accommodate for the feedback that has been given about them?
Absolutely. So to talk a little bit about the whys and hows, I think that the first goal for us with the Ascensions is to bring gameplay variety, right, between the characters. So you, it's like a way to give you a very specific objective, or something to do that is not just picking the best skills possible in the game. That kind of forces you to make different considerations when we're character X or character Y. Uh, and the reason that the Ascensions require more or less maintenance, let's put it this way, uh, it's in part, no, not in part, it's entirely by design. We wanted to have characters that feel pretty much like you can ignore the Ascension and it will activate automatically and be great for you, but you don't have to worry about it. So for like the Barbarian, for example, you just play the game and sometimes your guy gets big and wrecks everyone, and that's it. And on the other end of things, you might have stuff such as the Sentinel, which has to keep an eye on when the Panther is active, then find the right time and the right place to tame the Panther, because you need to be close to it for a few seconds. And I know that in high intensity scenarios such as high curses, that can be challenging if you don't make the space for it. But that is kind of part of the challenge for the character. It's a very powerful buff as well, that will give you a huge bonus. So we kind of want you to be thinking of, look, the bosses will spawn in the next 100 kills. I know that when the bosses are around, I won't be able to get the Panther, so let me track it down now. Let me already start the process, so maybe I'll mount 5 seconds before the bosses spawn, and I'll be mounted for the whole fight. This type of consideration is unique, right, to the Sentinel, for example, and that is kind of what we're looking for. Another thing to mention about the Ascension is that we look at a lot of feedback, right? A lot of feedback, and for some players, there are some Ascensions. Well, the Sentinel is one of them that a lot of players are angry about. They're like, "No, this is impossible to get into the Panther on higher curses," and I understand it. At the same time, there are players that are like, this is definitely my favorite Ascension. It's so gratifying to mount into the Panther and then you just destroy everything. So it's not black and white, and this is good. This shows that the characters are different to play with. With all that said, we're definitely open for change. If we feel that one Ascension is just not working for anyone, it's just boring, or it's just too hard, and sure, we'll definitely be open to changing not only the numbers, but if necessary, we could come up with a whole different Ascension, if necessary.
Okay, so there's a question here from Exabius, and he's asking, do you think with the addition of the skill trees for each character, the freedom of playstyle that was generated for each character with weapons has been reverted a bit? Right, I don't understand. I don't think I understand the question here, but like I said, Beastmaster had a bonk build, but with the Awakening summoning 4 Raptors, summoning builds are just objectively better. Similar things arise throughout the Awakenings.
Right. Yeah, I guess I get the point. That maybe some very specific builds you now can change. So, for example, the Raptors will take the aggro, so they will help you stay alive. So maybe you don't need to get bears, right? Because they would be doing that job for you. But at the same time, the bears could also be played for a build where it's health-based body slam, for example. And, you make that work because you then have a ton of health. So I don't know. I don't feel that there is any ascension. I could be wrong. I will keep an eye out on the feedback, but I don't feel that right now any of the ascensions are excluding builds or just replacing builds entirely. Making your character, your choices less meaningful. I really don't feel that that is how it is right now, but I could be wrong.
Yeah. Okay. So there's another thing that I wanted to ask you about, some community feedback as well that the community has been asking for a long time, and it's about the last update, actually the recent update, the Frostborn Wrath. We introduced a skill list, right, for the characters, for you to be able to actually see what kind of skills the characters are gonna get while you play the game, right? So it's easier. You don't have to guess work much more, right? So one of the things the community has asked for is a compendium, right? Like a bestiary kind of thing, like essentially a wiki inside of the game, right? This is something the community has been asked for a long time. And I want to ask if that's something you want in the game. Is that something you are willing to spend some work on to, put into the game?
Mm-hmm. No, absolutely. I think that I've also saw that this so many times, and honestly, I love the idea of a companion game. Even if no one asks for it, I would love to have it in the game, just because it's cool to have a place where you can go and look at all the enemies, and you see the screenshots and whatnot, and it gives you kind of a different view of things. So yeah, that is definitely coming. I can't really promise a date or an update. It is not a small feature, it requires not only a lot of UI work of how it works and the usability, but also writing probably, because we would like to add to this compendium not only just the full list of enemies, the full list of skills, the full list of blah blah blah, but also we could use this to discuss advanced concepts in the game, so how those synergies work. I don't know, there are so many questions that I see asked here on the chat quite a lot of times, that are concepts we could discuss in game. We could have somewhere for people to link to, that is officially supported, and the wiki has a lot of that. And again, thank you so much for the people that maintain the wiki, because I don't know if you guys know, the game has a wiki which has a lot of information, and it's all community based. You guys can always ask me for specific details, but most of it's just from the community, and it's all it's incredibly accurate. So, but it would be great for us to take the time to support all of that inside the game as well, right?
Oh yeah, and Viv actually typed here a accredited compendium, because we've had some feedback put into the game that was actually taken from the events, the feedback events that we had in the past, and we actually said that it's important to us to actually give credit to the people that actually contribute with these ideas, right? So I believe that Alan can speak a little bit more about this as well, but I believe that yes, uh we will give credit where credit's due whenever the system is adding to the game, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The easiest example of that are the skill suggestion events, right? So we have a document on our end of everything. So this skill was suggested by this person, and so it's not lost to time. We have all that documented for exactly for when this feature comes. Then so if you're looking at skill X and that came from one of the events or from a direct suggestion from someone, doesn't even need to be an event, we will credit whoever suggested it, because one, I think it's cool. When two, it's, as everyone said, it's credit where credit's due.
Yeah, absolutely. I see a question from a fellow Brazilian gamer here, actually. Name is Caramujo Manco. Um, would you consider doing a collab with other Survivor games? Like, for example, a bundle, maybe? Sales bundle or a
Yes.
collab in-game, something like that. Like, it would be really nice to see a special event with characters from Vampire Survivors, Brotato, Halls of Torment, for example. Also, you make the Brazilian game industry very proud. So, thank you, man.
I really appreciate the words. Bye, Brazil. But, I think that in terms of bundles, for sure, we haven't made any just yet, but let me say that there are bundles coming with other cool survivor games that we really like. But that is something that needs to be talked with the other developers. Collabs such as characters from one game into the other one, all those take some work, right? For us, for example, adding a character inspired by another game, that is a lot of work for us, right? That means the skill trees, and it's a lot of content to be added. In other games, it's a lot simpler in that sense, but it might be harder in other senses. So it's remains to be seen. Who knows? Maybe.
Yeah, for sure. I've actually seen some questions here. People actually want to know, what is your favorite class to play? Soulstone Survivors right now. What is your favorite class to play right now? What do you enjoy?
That is a hard question. I think that probably my favorite one is actually the assassin. If I'm to be honest, I really like the backstab mechanics. I know it is tough mechanics to get into this game. It's really hard to be in the back of enemies. The Ascension helps a lot with that. But for me, it's so rewarding, because the boss spawns and you kill it in like 1 second because you focus fire and it just disappears. So I love that.
Okay, that was I'm gonna say that's unexpected for me actually, because people are not exactly fans for the assassin that much, right? Compared to the other classes.
What about yours, Erwan? What is yours?
Actually, my favorite class is actually the most broken class, which is Necromancer, in my opinion. One of the most broken class, right? It's just, I don't know what to say. I like minions, so that's it, man. It's strong, and I think it's extremely fun to play. Just sit there and watch your minions do the work for you. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, Viv with the funny jokes there. So another thing that was asked here is, let me see if there are any more questions here that we can ask before we wrap this up. How long? We've been here for an hour already, right? Yep. It's 59
I was gonna
minutes.
say maybe we could do kind of a lightning round, just go through the questions very quickly, short answers, because there are a billion questions in the AMA channel. There are a lot of live questions as well. So
yeah, for sure. Whiffle here asked, how do you determine what to prioritize for development? In other words, how do you balance between content, reworks, quality of life changes, balance, and etc.?
To answer quickly, after discussing internally what are the changes that we think are interesting, when we want the update to be out, what can we fit in, what we can't. So that's why some updates will see more quality of life changes, some will see less, some will see bigger features, because some work is really hard to parallelize, let's put it this way, while some work is easy. So that's how.
Yeah, so another question here. Will the full release have lore or some compendium? We're talking about compendium, but what about the lore? Are you a fan of lore in games? You plan on adding it to Soulstone Survivors?
The lore for me it's a hard question. I do like it. I think that it's hard to get right, but we think a lot about the lore these days. As the game progresses and we add more and more stuff to the game and the Ascensions, and we are always thinking of what is the background of this character and does that make sense. So there actually is a lore that kind of lives in our heads right now, but yes, we definitely would like to explore it a lot more, not only Soulstone Survivors but future games.
All right, so I see a question here actually been asked we talk a little bit about this, right? The team is very open to making change. The game is still in early access, so stuff can change from here to launch and even post launch, obviously, right? So he's actually saying that perhaps we could consider like changes to the Ascension classes, like giving the Paladin, for example, some more durability on his tree or stuff like that, right? So I think that is obviously a possibility. We always take community feedback into consideration when, taking action into making stuff for the game, right?
Yeah, I
Um,
think that's it.
yeah. Um, I don't think. Let me see if there are more really relevant questions here. There are a lot of questions actually. They are duplicate here on the AMA questions, right? So I think we asked quite a bit of them. There are some questions that I can't ask because that's just going to spoil maybe future content coming to the game. Yeah, like questions like how long do you think the game will remain in early access? We talked a little bit about that, right? It's going to
Yeah.
take how long it needs to take. That's basically it. Okay, is there any plans for more elemental effects to be added into the game, like more tags or something like that? So I guess that's the question.
Mm, yes. Let's keep it at yes. Still not ready to really talk more about it, but yes. Let's just say there are more characters coming as well, so there will be a good reason for that.
Oh yeah, a question that the community has asked for, some members of the community has asked for is the about the daily challenges actually, and maybe weekly challenge or monthly challenge and things like that. Can you maybe talk a little bit about that, and are there any plans on
Mhm.
adding stuff like that into the game?
Let's just say that yes, without going too much detail. But as I mentioned, this next update will see already a focus on gameplay mechanics. To put it in very broad terms, uh, this kind of goes into that bucket. It will probably, who knows, maybe make its way into next update. I can't really promise, but we love the idea of the daily challenges. We had the channel here in Discord for forever, since the very beginning, pretty much. And there are so many challenges. There's would be so cool, if the game actually support you doing them, forcing yourself to follow certain rules. So yeah, it is definitely something we would love to get into the game. And who knows?
Yeah, for sure. I actually see a couple of interesting questions here that I missed before. About ragdolls. Actually, like it was a part of the game. People have fun with that. With the new enemies all having pre-made death animations, do we have confirmation that ragdolls won't be a part of the game in the future?
Yes, yeah, there is. They won't be a part. We were actually a big part of this update. This update actually had a lot of work. There was groundwork that you guys, most of you probably won't ever see, because it was changes to try and gain performance for the game. The ragdolls. I personally love ragdolls, but since a long time ago, the game went in a direction that you couldn't anymore push the bodies, a lot. And I have to say, guys, unfortunately, that's one of the things that if you played it, you remember, because it was super cool to see the meteor falling and the guys flying around, and that's been going for a while just because of performance, to be really honest. So now
Yeah.
we officially removed ragdolls. They are still present in a very few places, but it's not something that is making a comeback, unfortunately.
Okay. Another question from the same person here. Actually, about the soundtracks. We don't get much question about the sound, actually. Will the soundtrack be updated with the new cave team soon? Or are there plans to update the soundtracks for release or something like that? Or add new ones, maybe?
Yeah, no, absolutely. This is something we are pending for a while, right? We should have updated the soundtrack DLC with the cave already. We just didn't find the time. That soundtrack's now ready, and now we're waiting for the final version of the Frozen Wasteland soundtrack as well, so we can update the DLC with both. But the plan is that with every update, we're adding new soundtracks and adding all those to DLC as well.
Okay, I think. Are you ready to wrap up here, maybe? You want to still keep going a little bit more, or how are we
Yeah,
feeling?
no, I think that we covered quite a lot of ground today. This hopefully will not be the last Q&A we make. So there will be other opportunities to ask us more questions. But there is one thing we didn't really talk about here, right? Which is we'll be giving away 3
Oh,
Steam
yeah.
gift cards for your patience in participating in this Q&A. You know, I must say first that I'm super happy that of how many people we got here. I'm surprised. I was afraid it might be just me and Arwan chatting. So, you know, thank you. And, you know, I think that the gift card is a small thank you, really. It's just for being here, for being this amazing community. And, you know, if you have more questions, we're always around. You know, there are a lot of helpful people in the Discord as well, not only the developers, the moderators, active members. So I think that, you know, a lot of the questions have been discussed many times before as well, so people can help you with that. But, you know, who knows? If you guys liked it, the format of this Q&A, we could have another, you know. Let's see. We'll see what you guys think.
For sure. As Alan said, like, you know, if your question wasn't actually answered this time around, don't worry. I will scan through the questions here. I will actually document the questions that were not answered for future AMAs if they end up happening, right? And one actually last question here to end on a warm-hearted question here. What has been your most rewarding and fulfilling moment working on a game, and why?
I have just it's maybe I don't know, but I would say that the two moments, because they're similar, are the release of the demo back in July last year, because we immediately saw people enjoying the game and we had no idea what to expect. You know, we were happy with the game, but, you know, what do we know? So we had no idea what to expect. And suddenly there were a lot of people playing and enjoying, saying that they like it. That was one of the best feelings I ever had as a developer. And then again on the early access release, you know, just seeing the players commenting, because there was, you know, from the demo to the early access release, there was a lot of new things, right? It was a whole different game with their fixes and blah blah blah. And, you know, I was very much on the edge that day, because I was like, man, you know, what if everything breaks? What if people hate the content we made? What if it's too hard? What if it's too easy? What if this and that? And, you know, it was just awesome. It was I actually have the cork of the well, it's not champagne. What is the name? Oh, you know, we damn.
The word
I'm at a
sleeping.
loss for words. Yes,
Yeah.
but, you know, I still have the cork that I popped the day we released the game. That is my marker from that forever.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah, that's pretty cool actually. Uh, so before we wrap up here, I just would like to thank everyone that participated here. Like, thank you
No,
so much for
wait.
coming.
We have
Oh
to
yeah, the
do
giveaway.
the
The
giveaway.
giveaway, yes. I almost forgot about the
So,
giveaway.
guys, I was thinking about how we're gonna do the giveaway. At first, we're talking about maybe picking from the questions we like the most, but, some questions were asked for by a lot of people, some weren't, and So we didn't answer all of them. Doesn't mean they weren't good questions. So, I think will be the most democratic way I can think of is I'll random a number, 3 numbers from 1 to 70, and I'll count on my screen whoever is the number, and I will announce here in the chat. Sounds good?
Okay. All right. Roll the drums.
So 1 to 70, generate. Fucking hell, I wish it was a lower number. 55.
Gonna have to count to 70.
Now I have to count. Give it per line. So 6.
Watch Alan roll himself here. Imagine.
Yeah, not the smartest way, but it's the most democratic way. So give me 1 second.
For sure. Temper roll. Math, the enemy of people. Hey, thanks, Gricio. Thanks for coming up, man. It was really a cool experience here for sure.
So the lucky 55 is guy D168. Let me write here. Thank you for joining us, Gary168. We'll send you the gift code your way shortly. But there are 3 guys, so don't lose hope.
Congrats,
so
man.
Let me run another number. Let's hope it is lower. There you go. 8. So number 8 is Zwippy. 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 Thank you.
Chat?
Hopefully, yeah, he's still here.
All right, let's go. Congrats, man.
Send our way. And last one, 49.
Oh, damn.
At least not 70. So, let's see.
Last one is rigged.
Too mad. So, Too mad. I like your picture, Too mad. You're a good boy. You deserve it.
That's a cute looking dog. That's it, right?
All right, guys.
We have 3.
Now that's it. I hope that you guys like it. I hope you guys liked sharing the time with us. I really appreciate having you all over. It was really cool for us. I have to say, I was nervous, but it was really fun. I'm really happy we did it. And yeah, if you have any last words, everyone.
Yeah, I just wanted to say thank you so much for everyone that came here. I really appreciate it. It's been a blast, man, talking with this community for a year now. Actually, it flew by.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my god, man, it's been a year. It's been a crazy journey, and I hopefully many more years to come.
Oh right? Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it's all right, very guys. Nice catch up. Okay.
If you have any questions, if you need any help, if you want to send any more feedback, send it our way. Suggestions channels, chat channel, anywhere. We'll get to it. Thank you so much. It was really a big pleasure. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.